All right. Hello, my friends. Welcome again to another installment of Carpo's Delights, if you will. Well, I'm not sure exactly where to start here. I've got a lot of things that I've been wanting to discuss. Generally, my day consists of a lot of philosophy in the back of my mind as I'm going throughout the day, and it generally revolves around a theme. Now today in this video I wanted to talk about fear and how it cripples us as a society and as individuals. But I wanted to start off on a different note. This is to say that we are all on our own expeditions in life, if you will. Some of us can settle to believe what we're told or what we've learned or what we believe is true and to throw the rest out. Others are just never satisfied and they're always looking for something else. And then there's everyone in between. And when it comes to fear, as being a major issue in society, we have to ask ourselves first, what is it to be human? And what should we expect as being normal when it comes to the fight or flight response and what things we should actually be anxious about? I was talking with someone about dreams the other day and how dreams affect us consciously if we're aware of them. But how interesting it is that we may have a very complex dream and then when we wake up our brains naturally want to forget those dreams. And I was thinking about how our brains also want to forget negative experiences or things that have happened to us in the past that may have scarred us or harmed us. It's a natural resistance to worry about those things. Now, some people bypass or override this natural tendency to forget things, and they obsess about negative things that have happened to them in their life, and they become victims. And basically, people who have self-pity, and self-pity is one of the most crippling conditions a person can have, because self-pity, it's as if there's nothing wrong with having a little self-pity. If you lose your job, if you're sick, if you're not feeling well, something happens. I've been in excruciating pain for years with sciatica, and I know what it is to feel like crap and say, damn it, why me? But I also know what it's like to get over it and move on, and that's what we all have to do. We cannot sit and dwell on things that are wrong with us, because only a positive outlook is going to help us get better. And worrying about what may have been or what could have been is just frivolous, waste of time. We all know that. That goes without saying. But learning from the past is something that you don't have to sit and remember all the negative things in order to learn from the past, because when that comes up again, your brain will remember. Our subconscious always remembers. And so when we're dreaming, I've been having a lot of really lucid dreams lately, very strong, vivid dreams. And they're good dreams, but they're interesting. For example, last night, from what I recall, there were zombies in the woods, and we were trying to avoid them, and there was kind of a long straight road, and I remember we were like trying to skate down this road or something, and it was really weird because I told my son about it, my younger son. We were talking about dreams, and he's 4, and he said, did you ride roller skates? Or I said we were running away from zombies, and he said, were you wearing roller skates? And I thought that was really strange because the night before last, I had a dream that I was riding roller skates, and I had not told him about that. It was just really weird, the synchronicities and these coincidences that come up. It's almost as if dreams are kind of a little teasing notion that there's something else going on outside us, and if there is a subconscious that understands things that we don't, then in dreams those can manifest. And I'm not here to go into details about, spirituality or meaning of dreams, because it's not about that. But what it is about is that our dreams teach us a little bit about what we fear. We have nightmares. I know people that wake up sweating. I myself don't have bad dreams. I'll have a dream where something's going on, where I'm usually in a building sometimes, and it's generally abandoned, and it's kind of off-kilter, and it may be post-apocalyptic, or we're running from somebody, but it's never a scary feeling. It's as if, the metaphors, however they're expressing themselves to me, I understand that. And what I really wanted to convey here is that we go through cycles, ups and downs, and we feel, we may have seasonal elation as well as seasonal depression, and we also may have daily moments of that. And being wise in your own emotional states means embracing how you feel and acknowledging it, not fighting it, but knowing this too shall pass. Everything does. That no matter how bad we're suffering now, it generally will get better. And the worst that can happen, of course, is death, and we try to conquer that fear in our lives without obsessing over it. Or some people don't even want to talk about it, and that's fine. So I'll leave that out of this one. But ultimately, it's a main focus point in this subject, because fear, ultimately, I believe, is derived from fear of death. And that's where it all originates. And even if a person is religious and they don't believe that they're really going to die and it may be a fear of hell, let's say for Christians, or a fear of purgatory, or whatever a person's belief system may entail. Even for reincarnation, those who believe in reincarnation, it may affect your karma. So everything we do is, there are varying degrees of why we fear things, but ultimately we don't want to have to pay the price later for something we do now. But there are unwarranted fears as well. Fears about, let's say, one of the biggest issues that with fear, this is what I found interesting when researching a little earlier, was that the difference between our fears today and our fears of yesterday, our parents' fears, are strong, because our parents' fears, they both feared the same thing. If we were told the Russians were the problem, if we were told to fear nukes, we would stick together as a group, have these drills in our schools, and these are things that happened. We feared a nuclear attack, so we were together on the same fear, on the same page. Now today, the powers that be have tried to carry that fear into today using terrorism as the scapegoat. And if you ask Americans, many people do fear terrorism, and they are scared. But a majority of educated folks will tell you that terrorism is not a major priority on their list as far as being within America. That yes, we should be aware, be coherent, and we should try to stop these things, but that using terrorism as a reason to keep people in fear merely keeps them in fear of their neighbors, of entire cultures, and then they start to cast the entire Middle East out. Basically, anybody who lives over there, turn their sand to glass, the attitude a lot of people have, because they're scared. And fear has been played by politicians since the beginning. Anyone who doesn't use fear in the political arena gets nowhere. And ultimately, it doesn't even matter if they're using it in a positive or negative light. Everyone uses it. Even if they say, well, we're going to change this, they're saying we're going to change something that's negative. They're using the fear of how things could be or will be, such as, even those who want to fight global warming, talking about how everyone will be underwater in 100 years, or, the coastlines will be inundated, and people say, wow, really? And they're fearful. What do we really fear as a society? And this was an interesting thought, that in the past, when we might fear death, or we fear, basically we can fear terrorism, we can fear disease, or getting sick. That's a major fear of people. Fear of other religions. When asked, people say in, the first world problems, say in the UK, they were asked, what their biggest fear was. It was falling below their current, ability to pay finances. In other words, their standard of living. Falling below their current standard of living in the future is a big fear. And that could come in many different ways, of course. But I think that one of the biggest fears today is losing our progress. And what I mean by that is, when society didn't have much to lose, it wasn't such a big deal if, an empire collapsed, because another empire could step up and fill the shoes. They could print the same coins, they could build the same chariots. Today, in the technological world, something such as the 1859 Carrington event, which was a major solar flare, CME, impact on the Earth, which caused telegraph lines to catch on fire. Now, back then, there weren't very many telegraph lines. Electricity was pretty fresh, and these, weren't very popular, but there were some major issues with it. Some telegraph stations caught on fire and some lines burned up. Well, we ask ourselves, what would happen today if the same event happened and we don't have the grid protected? Now, it's something that's a very legitimate thought, and if it happened, and let's just say the grid went down, we would lose everything, and we could go, let's just move fast forward and say, a few years later, everything went to shit, riots, looting, and then all of a sudden we are living kind of back in the old days. People know that they could still get by, and they could still grow food, and they might have enough dried food to last them a long time. Maybe they could pillage for some, whatever it may be. The biggest fear is losing what we've worked for as a society, our technology. People are even fearful to lose, their drinking water, and they should be, because people like in Flint, Michigan are definitely not having any of it. They're having a major issue. And it's not just Flint, it's all around the country. Now there's several cities around that are having pipe problems with their water, as well as fracking in Texas, which has, caused chemical leaches into their water. It's going to get worse as the future goes on, and so I'm not trying to doom and gloom here. What I'm saying is that that's a big fear for people. That's something they actually should be scared of, but shouldn't be fearful of. I should say they should be aware of it and know that they can prepare. See, there's a big difference between being scared of something or fearful and closing your eyes to it completely. If you want to ignore it, then it's going to hit you harder. I mean, that's just the way things go. Anything that's ignored is forced upon you over time. You know what I mean? So I'm going to see how much time I've been used and make sure the camera's still going. Okay, good. It's important that I'm not sitting here talking to a camera that turned off or something. So, big question I have kind of is, are we better off now than we were before? There's a certain nostalgia that comes with wanting to go back to the old ways. And there was a time when I believed that humanity was a scourge on this planet and that we needed to be wiped off so we could start all over. And now knowing that mankind would just move himself up to this point again, I mean, we yearn to evolve. We are technologically fascinated. We our brains, it seems to be a side effect of having intellectual curiosity or of being conscious of ourselves, is that we say, hey, this is it, well, I'm going to make it the best it can be. Because it means that when you're aware that you're alive and you're going to die, then life has to take on meaning, and we create this entire society in order to fulfill these secret fears that we have within us, that we're inadequate, or that we're going to die and never exist again, or that we're, maybe going to burn in hell even, or that maybe we're just going to suffer. A lot of folks don't even fear afterlife or death. They fear the dying process, which is something I don't, because, now I'll get into that some other time. Blocking our past negatives is something that actually does help us, but if we do it too often and we're not, and we're ignoring it purposefully, then we're not dealing with it. And you look at every single thing that's happened to you in your life that's negative has been a positive. And if you don't see the positive, you're not looking hard enough. And I've heard someone say something like that once, and it stuck with me because it's so true. There's always a positive in every situation. It's just a matter of seeing it. And it could be merely learning. And I've even taken it to big examples, like the bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. What is the good to come out of that? Well, hopefully it's prevented it from happening later with bigger bombs. Not to say that it has, but the possibility, at least, that we've learned something from it, and hope that we won't do it on a larger scale and completely annihilate ourselves. But nuclear war has always been a legitimate fear of people. Even if you don't die on the initial blast, your food's damaged, nuclear winter, everyone suffers. I mean, that's the end as we know it. So, but still, it's not worth fearing because you can't change it. It's out of your circle of influence. And that's an important one. Now, are we better off now? Probably not. But what keeps us going is this, the media is feeding us all of this nonsense. And it's pumping us full of propaganda, and always has, but it's also propaganda that people want to hear, and that's the thing people don't seem to realize. that it's not just a group feeding us all this crap. It's the people are willing to believe the crap, and they buy into it. We're just as much to blame as anyone. All of us are to blame for the problems, but if we're looking at it the wrong way, it's not a fully negative thing. We as an entire society have learned something from this. And will that help us in a positive in the future? I don't know. But our fear really today is it's hard to say it's not warranted, because it is, but being fearful of the unknown is a waste of time. And a lot of folks are really hooked up and obsessed with conspiracies. It brought me to this delusion, looking up delusional people and delusional states of mind, because I was very curious about, how it was really defined appropriately. And apparently there are 6 subcategories of delusions, but the 3 main ones, there's the delusions of grandeur, and these are the people that I've met often on YouTube who say that they are either an angel or a reincarnation or one of God's messengers. They have this belief that they're somebody very, very important, or that their message is something that nobody else knows, and that, if you don't believe them or listen to them, then, you're just going to burn or rot in hell. There are people who really believe that they are, the shit, if you will, and that their information is the only information that matters. Those are the delusions of grandeur. Now, there's also 2 more. There's delusions of sickness. I don't remember the definition of the term, how they used it, but these are the people who have delusions that they're sick or ill all the time. People who manifest sicknesses, who create their own, their own illnesses and their own, they want to live in this fearful state where they're always in harm or they're always about to be harmed. And then there's delusions of conspiracies, and that one goes vast and wide. But generally, a lot of these folks think that there's conspiracy, that the cops are watching them, or that, the FBI has been staking them out or want them personally or something. And generally, all of these have to do with them, the individual. They're delusions that involve the person themselves as being the center of some type of attention. But generally, they can be normal outward appearance in all other ways. So it could be this one friend who's a conspiracy fanatic, and he seems really rational, reasonable. He's very intelligent. He's capable. And he's telling you all these things that you say, I don't know. Is that really that extent? Is a conspiracy that wide and vast? And if so, what does it matter? But when you understand the delusional aspect of some people, at least, then it really helps. And I'm not saying all people who believe in conspiracies are delusional. Of course not. There are plenty of conspiracies. But generally, most of them are, very few of them are actually have any effect, that there's anything you can really do about it to affect or change these conspiracies. Or they may be from the past, in a time before people even, since you can't prove, there's no documentation, or that, there's some galactic conspiracy between the Federation of Planets, whatever the person may believe. And we as individuals believe a lot of things, One thing I've noticed is that critical thinkers, or people who are rational, who consider, people like myself, I consider myself a critical thinker. I consider myself a philosopher, and I also consider myself a skeptic. And skeptic has become one of those bad words almost. I've been called, just for being a skeptic and having my own opinion, I've been called a shill or a troll or a liar by, several dozens of people over the years, because I'll post a comment relating to a situation that's very conspiracy-oriented, in which I question the validity of the information provided. And it's funny being labeled a shill, because a shill is truly, it's not just a paid disinformant, it's a person who's paid in order to help a company garner profits. A shill could be someone who posts, oh yeah, well I tried this product and it's great. Or they could be one who dismisses another product. Or it could be it's basically profit driven most of the time. But anytime today, in today's world, somebody doesn't agree, they just call somebody a shill, Or they're an Illuminati agent, or whatever it might be. Over the years, it's shifted, different terms. It's all humorous to me, because what I've found is that I was conspiracy, I was way into conspiracies. I read a book called Behold a Pale Horse by William Cooper, who was the guy that Alex Jones was friends with back in the day, and where he kind of swiped his information to start his little cronyism. And a lot of these screaming truthers out there, they're just full of shit. They do add and contribute, and people say, well, they're waking folks up. But I say, but they're doing it with a fearful tone. They're doing it while they're selling their products, such as Alex Jones selling his survival kits, things like that. Or people actually start to believe what they're saying. And a lot of the times what they say David Icke, guys like him, a lot of what he says is true. And he maybe has changed over the years. Maybe people say he is trying to help other people to wake up and be aware. But what I hear is just fear-mongering. And fear-mongering is what's getting us into trouble. And that's why I'm so adamant about saying that these truthers, these fear-mongering truthers, are like a disease, a scourge. They are feeding off of people's fear because people love fear. It's an addiction. If you get up in the morning and you go straight to YouTube and Google latest conspiracies or Illuminati, or search out certain, words that are conspiracy-oriented, then you may have an addiction to, sensationalism. And I know this because I did for a while. Especially back in the, mid-2000s when the internet first really became, the forums started getting more functional and popular. I was like, say the around 2000, 2001, I was like, wow, I could finally get on the net and see if I can confirm some of these things that I read from these books. And I realized that I was just not comfortable with the future and the prospects of the future. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't have a college degree. I didn't have a very good job. I didn't know what I was going to do. So the next, logical step was to say, oh, well, the whole world needs to be brought to its knees, so we can start over, so I can live an interesting life. And I see the error in my ways of thinking now, and I realize that, it's important that we just do what we can and not even question apocalypse or what's going to happen tomorrow. But, I've noticed that critical thinkers are marginalized by the conspiracy community, or those who are, very into truthing, if you will. That it's not just with them. It's the critical thinkers are marginalized by the truther community. They're marginalized by the Christians, by the Muslims. They're marginalized by the left wing, by the right wing. Anybody who sits and says, well, left and right wing, they're the same bird, and they both do have a little bit to contribute, instantly you get attacked by either side. You're either a libtard or a conservative asshole. And the same thing with religion. Like, no, you pick a team, you pick a side. People look at it as if you go to a sports game and sit on the middle line and you're there to see both teams. It's not like that. You don't have to pick a side because you don't want anyone to necessarily win. You want what's right to win. You want justice and equality for all people. That's what I want. That's what I'd like to see. But also, I realize some people don't earn it. And then we get into the semantics and the values of whether or not all people are really equal. And as you get older and you start to see all the crooked people out there, and you say, no, we're not all equal. Some of us don't deserve equality because they were not earning it. People who are the criminals, that are true criminals, not the pot smoker who goes to jail, or the person who downloads something illegally, but the person who beats his wife, or harms his kids, or is violent towards others, or steals from people. Those are the people who are the problems in society, but there are too many of them. So we fear them, and we put them on the news and say, hey, this person's out to get you. So I just wanted to say, please stop fearing, for God's sake. I'm going to see where this camera is at. Probably time to go. Yeah, it's time to go. So I wish you all good luck. Have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you soon.